Every morning the factory floor ticked with boredom long before the machines shuddered to life. On that last day a chill wound through the building, the manager's footsteps slapped across the linoleum, and I already knew, somehow you just know. I'd watched Matty get dismissed last week, suitcase in one hand, bottle in the other, his torso braced like concrete but his eyes gone hollow. Dawn smeared cobalt across the factory's grim windows as I loaded switchboards. That morning, the hum of the compressors grated harder than usual. Trevor in assembly muttered something about my headphones and fairies, glancing at the battered Tascam I'd slung over my neck. For months, I'd recorded the shunt of pipes, the clang of punches, the groans of cranes. I told them I was building a sound library. They told me to stop pretending. When Mr. Barker called me to the office, silence swallowed the shop. A red cheap carpet outlined his desk, speckled with coffee stains. He cleared his throat. "Mate, it's a redundancy," he said, staring just past my shoulder. "They say automation's cheaper, you're last in, first out." I held my Tascam, squeezing it, and nodded. Inside, rage yawned awake, a dark, reined-in animal. I pictured smashing the tape recorder on his desk, watched him flinch behind his big glasses. But I only said, "Right, I'll pick up my things." Leaving at dawn felt like exiting a crime scene. The air outside was metallic, thick with dew. A train howled in the distance, mocking. I wanted to shout that they'd regret this, that I'd do something better. Instead, I rode the 438 home, my jaw clenched, neighbors' faces flickering past the window, none of them noticing. Home was a skinny rental in Dulwich Hill. Mum stood at the kitchen window, hair up in pink curlers, cigarette clasped in her right hand. When I told her, she clicked her tongue. "Well, you always had your head in the clouds, Eli. Maybe you'll finally use that music stuff now. I hope you've got a backup plan." She didn't say it as an insult. She said it as an expectation, a confirmation. When Uncle Peter dropped by, he heard and laughed. "Sound design," he scoffed, mouth full of toast. "You want to get paid to record what birds and trains? Go busk on the street, mate." His eyes crinkled with disappointment. The same lines echoed everywhere. At my cousin's birthday, during awkward Christmases. Dad phoned from Perth once that month and paused when I said I was out of work. "You can't live on dreams, Eli. People need plumbers. Not blokes making whoosh noises." I internalized it. Every time I opened Ableton on my battered laptop, I heard their voices. Rage tried to turn to pride but always retracted, red and pulsing. It kept me awake. On the worst nights, my thoughts churned with resentment, then exhaustion, but the sound world pulled me in. Late at night, I took long walks, recorder tucked in my jacket, mapping out tram bells, neon buzz, rain pinging off tin roofs. I uploaded field recordings to forums, stitched samples for strangers on SoundCloud, scored tiny indie games, collaged track layers till juggernaut roars felt cinematic. I made almost nothing. Mum's sighs grew heavier. Rent notices arrived with big red stamps. An old mate cat let me couchsurf for 2 weeks. She listened to my mixes, tapping out circuits on her MIDI pad, breathing life into the emptiness. When work surfaced, a podcast intro, a local short film, I took everything, swallowing pride, billing far less than minimum wage. For years, life scraped by. I delivered fish and chips, dropped recordings in random competitions, tried for jobs at studios that ghosted me. I knew the rules: keep quiet, keep head down, don't expect applause. The break came in Bone Studios, in a cramped, graffiti-soaked space in Redfern. Kat knew a producer who needed a subtle soundscape for an offbeat festival film. He wanted Sydney's real pulse, something unseen but not untouched. I took summary magpies in Centennial Park, the crescendo of a Newton traffic jam, the hollow hum at the Anzac Bridge at midnight. I mixed, layered, cut, haunted by doubt but driven by that old animal rage. When the film dropped on the circuit, a judge in New York loved the sound design. Word spread cautiously at first. Then fast, an ad agency wanted an ambient track for Qantas. I produced it overnight. Qantas aired it, then the BBC emailed about a miniseries. Suddenly money arrived, not too much yet, but it was clean, precise. I had my name in credits, I barely saw it coming. The industry, once distant, let me in a little at a time. I bought good headphones. I moved into a better flat near Glebe. At night I lay in bed and remembered every slight, every time family told me to be realistic and found they no longer stuck. They passed through me like wind, stinging but harmless. Years settled, my portfolio swelled. I prided myself on not being cocky, but when the Sydney Opera House commissioned me for an interactive sound walk, I felt a catharsis so pure I laughed, alone till I wept. Underground tunnels, resonant whale song, reimagined cockatoos, my sounds, my city. They played it for tens of thousands. I could have stayed away, but something gnawed at me every time I saw Mum's missed calls, her hesitant texts. How are you, love? You okay? She tried awkwardly to show interest, forwarding links to any article about music. But when Aunt May messaged about Uncle Peter's 60th at the local club in Ashfield, with it would mean a lot to the family, the thread of return caught and tugged at something deep. On the day I felt 17 again, skin prickling under borrowed slacks, anticipation and leftover anger wrestling in my chest. At the door, Kat squeezed my arm. If you want to bail, we just go, she whispered, but I didn't. Sometimes you have to see who you used to be. Inside, the club buzzed with pokies and laughter. Uncle Peter boomed, "Look who's here, Mr. Hollywood." Across the table, my cousin eyed my jeans, dark, properly fitted now, and asked if I'd finally gone legit. I smiled, shrugged. Mum hugged me, warm but cautioning. "They've got a piano, Eli. You could play something if you want." Her voice was fragile. She wanted to believe but didn't quite know how. The assault came at dinner. Over steak, beer, gravy, Uncle Peter jabbed his fork and said, "Still chasing sounds? Hey, you want to show us any of your magic?" The table tittered, some in kindness, most not. I tasted old, hot rage in my mouth. Years ago, I'd have retreated. Instead, I looked at Kat, who nodded, and I reached into my backpack. I'd brought a wireless speaker and iPad just in case. "Sure," I said, steady. I stood, plugged in, and queued up the Opera House Soundwalk. They gave me this commission last month. My voice was flat, toneless. My hands only shook a little. Sound bloomed out. Sydney morning, ferries sighing, wind cresting under the old bridge, magpies lilting, all layered in pristine hi-fi glory. The room stilled, people stopped chewing. The familiar sounds of Sydney came back to them, but in ways they'd never noticed, metallic, earthy, vast, intimate. Then the tunnels opened up, my design, conjuring a cathedral of water and stone, footsteps echoing. A little girl at the next table stared wide-eyed, mouth open. Even the club staff paused. I let the piece finish, didn't look at anyone, laid the iPad down, sat. The silence after was big and strange. Uncle Peter opened his mouth, closed it. No jokes. His old face went slack, then a smile flickered and died. My cousin cleared his throat, quieter now. "That's actually kind of beautiful, mate. Sounds like home, but better." Someone, I think Auntie Magda, started slow clapping, then everyone followed. Mum dabbed her eyeliner and stared at her empty glass. Only then did I realize her hand wasn't shaking. The rest of the night transformed. People asked questions, curious this time, what programs I used, what places I'd captured if I really worked on that mini-series. I showed them press clippings, photos from behind the scenes at the Opera House. The skepticism ran out of air, reduced to a flustered embarrassment. Later, I found myself outside on the curb with Uncle Peter, where the club's neon sign threw gaudy pinks onto the footpath. He coughed, offered me a cigarette, and when I declined, he kept it for himself. "Wasn't expecting that, Eli," he said. "Thought all you did was muck about with gadgets." "Can't say I get it, but you bloody did it." He smiled sideways, gruff but not unkind. I pressed my shoe into a crack in the sidewalk, heart still racing. "I just needed a chance," I said, voice rough. "And maybe for people not to laugh." He nodded, facing away. "Yeah, sometimes it's easier to mock what you don't understand." We stood in silence till Mum came out, purse under her arm. She hugged me again, tighter this time. "Proud of you, darling, even if it took me too long to say." Rage melted, slow and relieving. I realized that part of me was less angry at them than I'd told myself. I was angry at myself for never fighting back, never backing my own heart. But their doubt had shaped me too, fueled something that flared up, got refined, and guided my hands every sleepless night. We went home and I slept for the first time in years, not like a child, children sleep because the world is simple. I slept like someone who'd built their own silence, who'd learned to shape noise into meaning, and finally found a way to let it go. A month later, Mum visited the Opera House, listening to the Soundwalk alone. When she rang me afterwards, her voice was quiet. "I heard the city different today. Thank you for showing me, Eli." On my evening strolls, recorder slung over my shoulder, I rarely found the old anger waiting. I heard only the city, vast and living, and myself in it, not mocked, not ignored, just present, recording a world that had finally learned to listen back.